Okay, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Random Gamer Riven and I will be your tonight's host in Alba Odyssey, Legend of Eldean on the Sega Saturn. This is our second attempt after last night's stream. Had some interesting results thanks to the fact, turns out it's a bit bugged running on a Sega Saturn and will randomly not play the opening intro correctly. So ironically, when I ran it straight after the stream had finished, it ran perfectly and went straight correctly into the next part of the game. But on the attempts on the stream, it didn't. So, oh well, that's the way cookie crumbles. Apologies for being slightly late. Just as I started today, OBS, our stream software, decided to crash as well. So it has been one of those weeks streaming, I think. Just about anything that has gone wrong can go wrong. It did go wrong. So here we are finally with the wonderful Alba Odyssey on Sega Saturn. This is the working design translation. So working design translations are a little bit controversial these days, but I still think it's worth playing because it is the only English release of the game. And if working design hadn't translated it, then we would never got to play this title in English. I should add I'm English, so of course this was not released in Europe or PAL territories, it was only released in North America. So already I can tell you there's a typo there. Hi Pike, have you seen Arcus? He managed to steal out of the house without doing his chores again. Sneak out of the house without S-N-E-A-K. Sneak out of the house without doing his chores again. Too much time with the no good nilk. Now, I'll just show you. So I have slightly just loaded a save file where you start off in your bedroom. Again, American culture reference, the expressway. So this is literally you wake up straight after the opening intro we saw in last night's stream. Unfortunately, as you were in last night's stream, whenever we tried to get past it, it didn't work. It did eventually. I think I had to try it about 4 times, but basically the attempt I made after the stream, it all worked hunky-dory. So this is a sort of classic old school RPG. It is worth exploring everywhere. So this is Pike's bedroom. He actually wakes up in this bed and he picks up the sword Sirius, and the first thing you have to do is equip the sword. Literally, I've just gone to speak to, when I started, you automatically have to speak to your adoptive mother here, Lala. I think it probably worked every time if I ran it in 50. I suspect what it is a timing issue on a modified PAL Saturn. So the Elder's house is here as well, and you can actually search these pots, but I've already searched them, so I saved it. I literally searched these pots, spoke to the Elder, and then started the stream. Okay, we had a slight hiccup in the stream there, not sure what caused it. But yes, apologies over yesterday's stream, that was unexpected that we had the PAL. So it seems to be an issue. I suspect it's probably because I'm running it on a modified PAL Saturn, which doesn't quite get to the NTSC speed, which might have caused a slight discrepancy. So basically, you start in your bedroom, you wake up, and I went down straight to the save point. So I'm just re-going the ground that we previously were at. And here you get to Chapter Villages. Now, working designs translations were, as I said, a bit controversial. Here's a case in point. Maybe, so I know some games have slightly salacious text, but they read this guy here. Howdy, Pike. Nice day here. Sorry, little guy, but you know the rules. I have to treat you like the other kids who can't fly. If you want to leave the village, you have to be with Leia, or Faulty. And Satan Pike, if you don't mind, I prefer you went with Leia. I live just to get a peek of her. Man, Leia means she's a hottie plus. I mean, that's an American slang, hottie. I'm not saying quite few RPGs and Japanese games like Tales of Phantasia did have lots of rude jokes in originally. No, straight off the bat, starting village, we've got transparencies just sort of wandering under leaf effect. In fact, there we've got a character half in, half out. So we've got some wonderful 2D sprite work that makes it feel like the village is under the cover of a forest. Primo sake and I can't drink it. So I will do a non-commentated video as well, probably like the first hour or two. Now the opening sound score is lovely. It's really serene. So yeah, I literally came down to the save point. I will do a standard video as well. Oh, we got Faulty. Hello, Sega Saturns. Yes, it is all working good and well. So yes, you get insulted by fellow members of the Harp tribe. Yes, interesting Sega Saturn Z. It actually worked first time I tried it straight after the stream, so... Which is somewhat annoying, because literally it's like, what, 3 or 4 times I tried it in the stream, and then the 5th time... I think it's basically a load cycle issue on modified Saturns, as I think it's picking up the wrong cycle on occasion. So I'm looking for 40 at the minute, and I have no idea where he is at present. I will do a non-commentated video as well. I think this game deserves that. Maybe I'll do about an hour and a half. I might do slightly longer. It's been some time since I last played this, I have to admit. I'd quite like to do a long play on this, but I think that would take an awful lot of time, and I don't think this is the type of game to get huge amounts of views. I saw there've been a few other long plays on this recently, so... Yeah, it, as they say, sod's law. Literally, the first time I tried it straight after, it booted, no issue. So, to say I was somewhat annoyed was a mild understatement. As you hear, the music is absolutely fantastic. It really is enjoyable to listen to. Okay, so I'm looking for 40. The only thing I didn't show at the start is he's Pike waking up and just going down to the save point. So let's go back to Lala, seeing as she doesn't appear to, as 40 doesn't appear to be around. Hang on, they called one of them Sirius and one of them 40, and there's only 3 of them there. Okay, translation error. Now, being an RPG veteran, it was nice to go and chat to the characters straight after where the well is. So I sent you. Cow and a sister. Now, interesting, unlike some other RPGs, this one's actually divided into 2 effective stories. You do the initial story campaign, and then the next part takes about a few years later, so it's a bit weird the way it works. But it sort of follows on from the original story. But yeah, the initial part's quite small, and you think, oh, that's it, so I've done it, and then... And you get a whole second... And the second story's actually bigger than the first part. So there's the Village Powers Crystal. Sort of pseudo 3D, 2D rendered effect. Oh, of course, Sirius is the sword, I forget. Sending her address. I'm sending her my love. Girls dig flowers. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of American cultural references in this. And here's the first villain, although not the final end villain. You see, technically the character's robed in purple, not black, because it's another translation error. Yes, and the So yes, and so begins Act 1. We have the gear, we can now battle the enemies, and we have the sword. Oh, cheapest, least respectful stone granite, yeah. Don't worry, you do revert to the spell in at the end of the first half. Now, one thing I will say is Working Design did make a few tweaks to the game, such as run speed and experience, which were actually quite good changes. They also reduced the loading time. So they steal the crystal and only turn the both of you into... That's the house just come from. Just quickly save it. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Instead of being sort of thrown into the midst of the end section that I had. As you're on your own with no buddies. I will actually do a proper run without commentary as well, because I know a lot of people would probably like to see that. And I'll probably cover a bit longer, seeing as if I use this as a practice run, that means I can get further. Maybe I might actually do a proper run on this as well as this one side quest. So there we have transparent clouds on the world map. Probably one downside when you bring up the menu, it resets the music. Here we go, the very first battle. Well, the battle music doesn't really change much, which is perhaps a bit... You kind of want a few battle musics to like the first and second half of the game. But I see some great transparencies and some fantastical musical score as well. This is not necessarily the biggest RPG, but I remember playing it and quite enjoying it. I know, as mentioned, the final dungeon, as we showed in the previous stream, I will include a link to, although I've unlisted the previous stream, I will include a link to it in this stream via a card. So if you want to recap over the disaster that was the previous stream, by all means. Okay, so I can't get through there. I don't think there's a... There we go, the world map. You can see where we are. There's it mentions a weird thing when you're here, and then when I go back it will reset the music. I wonder if that actually happened in the Japanese version. This is one game I might try and get the Japanese version at some point just to see the differences, because working design did apparently improve the game. So, but sadly the English version these days is very expensive. It wasn't released in PAL and it's going to cost you at least, you're looking at 150 quid. For what is extensively a SNES Plus RPG and how it looks, it's certainly not as good as sort of many of the RPGs custom built for the Saturn. This does look more like a SNES game that was just given a few upgrades, and apparently this one did start life on the Super Nintendo and then got upgraded to the Saturn as it was going to basically release too late on the SNES. However, it is the last game in Sunsoft's Albert Odyssey series. There were 3 of them. Now, although this is actually, I should say, this is actually called Albert Odyssey Gaiden in Japan, which makes better sense as it's a prequel. It's effectively, well, prequel side story is what it is. Gaiden kind of means side story, as in not main story, so... So there you go, you learn spells as you level up. Pretty much standard for a lot of RPGs, but it's nice enough. But yeah, the music is absolutely fantastic. Frame rate, not so good on the world map points, but it does look fantastic. Apparently working design did reduce the encounter rate. Now, the encounter rate as it stands is still quite high, but it was reduced for the North American release, which is probably a good thing, as I imagine it was very... And by the way, guys, if you like the stream, by all means do hit the like button. Much appreciated, just to show that it works partly on YouTube's stat tracking, etc. If people like the stream, it gets a thumbs up, and then it likes, views, and comments apparently all add to your... I think even dislikes slightly add. I don't think they actually subtract quite as badly as what people think. I think it's more interaction on a video. Actually, comment is, excuse me, very straightforward. And even today, the stream decided to be a bit problematic, because when I first started, it decided to OBS decided to crash spectacularly when I started. I started the stream, so apologies for being a few minutes late. That's certainly the world did not seem to want me to stream Albert Odyssey. I will do a normal video as well without me commentating over, or at least might not commentate over much of it. I might just do a brief introduction. Well, I'm tempted to replay this just because I missed a couple of the extra bosses in quests, and there was one extra boss that I missed with one of the items, and that still today annoys the hell out of me, the fact I know I didn't beat it. There are a couple of weird side quests that are only available in certain parts of the game, but before I go any further, I'm actually going to just read you the... Now, is this a town? Carnate, which has been burnt to the ground, unfortunately. Before I go any further, I'm actually going to read you the translation notes, which is quite interesting, and this is included in the back of the manual. So the manual is full colour, so kudos to Working Designs for doing that. It's really nice, actually, full colour manual. But I will just read the text from the translation notes. So this is interesting because I think some of you guys will quite enjoy it. So this is actually from one of the guys at Working Design. I'm not sure who wrote this, maybe Victor Island or maybe one of the other guys, but here goes. First off, thanks for your patience. We know you, our customers, have been waiting patiently for this title to arrive in stores for many months now. As usual, what we first considered to be a straightforward port turned out to be not quite as easy as we first imagined. But now that it's done, let's talk about how we changed from the Japanese version. Let's talk about what we changed from the Japanese version. The single biggest improvement that was made to the game was decreasing the loading time to and from battles. Initially, the Japanese version could take up to 8 seconds to load the battles, then another 8 or so to return to the map mode. We managed to reduce that time down to about 6 seconds to load the battles and 4 or 5 seconds to load the map mode after battle. This saved about 8 seconds per battle cycle, which is quite significant if you add up how many times you get into battle mode during the course of a game. Over the entire game, you're probably waiting more than an hour less than the Japanese players had to. Another major improvement was a reluctancy of about 25 to 35% of the frequency of combat. In the Japanese version, we felt that combat was just too stinking frequent, raising the frustration factor too much. We therefore reduced the probability combat while increasing the amount of experience you gained with each battle, so the net effect was that the level up progression remains the same, with much less walk 2 steps and fight syndrome, which I know is a problem actually with a lot of Japanese RPGs. Literally walk 2 steps, bam, battle. Solid Runner that I streamed was an issue with that. Boss experience values were also readjusted because towards the end, beating a boss wouldn't even raise your character's 1 level in most cases, and the next boss required your party to be 7 to 8, 9 levels stronger to beat. Too much powered up battling is wasted in our opinion, so in the end just wasted time in our opinion. So the end now provides enough experience for the character to jump forward to 6 or more, immediately requiring little or no powering up battling to beat the next boss. Minor improvements include providing L and right shift buttons while in the magic and equipment areas of the start menu to allow quick and easy switching between characters while having to back out to the menus and selecting a new character. We also put a nice descriptive date and time stamp on each Albert Odyssey stave location in backup RAM. Diagonal walking time was also improved. For some reason, diagonal in the Japanese version walked slower than up, down, left and right movements, and the overall speed of each character walking speed was increased, especially in towns. There was also many positioning and usability improvements too numerous to mention individually, which is quite interesting. Finally, there were a few really nice improvements we had to take out at the last minute due to problems that cropped up when we pulled the debug mode out during final testing. I'll tell you about them so you don't think we missed the idea that the game needed them. When characters cast a sleep or paralytic spell on monsters, we used to have the monsters stop moving until the spell wore off. Likewise, if they had a charm spell cast on them, the monsters would move weirdly so the player could tell it was not functioning normally. We also had a very cool feature where you could selectively turn off any or all the spell animation, damage display or monster impact dying animation, thereby making the battle scenes with low level monsters really breezed by. Unfortunately, when the debug mode was removed near the end of development and the time it ate up was freed, we found these changes could affect the overall system adversely. It crashed occasionally, so since we didn't have the time to make them stable enough to level up enough to leave in, we reluctantly had to take them all out. Wax on, wax off. That's about it for this one. We hope you have fun with this adventure. Keep those cards and letters coming in, and remember, we're nothing without you. So that was from Working Design. That's an interesting bit of history on the game. Interesting to read about the changes they took out. It's a shame they didn't leave some of their improvements and did not mess around with the translation as much, because Working Design's translations are somewhat controversial these days. So you can see here the town has been absolutely destroyed by fire and attack. So we won't be coming here for refreshment. I don't think there's anyone alive in this village. It's literally just a ghost town. So yes, the village, I think the party that attacked you leveled the village just earlier, so unfortunately this village has been leveled to the ground, so we have to progress further on. Now, if anyone's interested, I can always show the SNES ones. I do actually have the original Albert Odyssey and Albert Odyssey 2. Only the original game is basically the one called Albert Odyssey, and that's the one where you play as Albert. And that's the game, and all the other games refer to this. This doesn't have too many links. I think there's mainly story links and side story mentions, but I'm not entirely sure when in the timeline this takes place of the 3 games in the series. But I know this, I think this is sometime after the previous games, or as mentioned, side story. So it doesn't have those 2 games. Will have a tactical RPGs like Shining Force, Fire Emblem, so they are very different. They are very good. They're much later Super Nintendo games, 93 and 94, so they look the business and play really well. Although the North American version is really expensive, as I mentioned, the Japanese version is fairly cheaper in comparison. In fact, you can be picked up for not a lot at all. There was also a Satori release, and I assume that may have some bug fixes over the original. I have to check on. But either version, I mean, even if you don't get to play in English, it's still an enjoyable game if you're a fan of RPGs. But yeah, it's not. I mean, it's probably one of the few Final Fantasy style RPGs on the system, and I really enjoyed it when it came out. Well, I didn't get it when it came out. I got it a few years later, but I did really enjoy it when I played through it. I did buy this, so I bought this I think in 2002 or 2001, and I think I paid about £70 for it back then, which was pricey at the time. Oh, Silence of the Lambs reference. So yes, I can actually send lecture. So there's lots of really fantastic effects in this game. So, I mean, you got the sort of pseudo 2D scrolling background for the sky, which looks like it's mode 7 almost. There's some nice stuff. I mean, the previous games on Super Nintendo are fantastic as well, but this is actually probably the weakest of the 3, I have to admit, because for a Saturn game, technically it's not that impressive. It's still a nice game, but it's not a fantastic game on Saturn. It's a good game on Saturn, it's not a fantastic game. And as we showed, the final dungeon, some of the later dungeons are just unpleasant mazes to navigate.
Let's get down to business, Swordmaster.
Now, what's interesting is I noticed on Wikipedia that mentioned, oh, this game had some voice acting for the time, which was it wasn't fully voiced over, and I was like, well, hang on, very few games actually had voice acting during the PS1 and Saturn era. This was actually a rarity, so Wikipedia again being a junk website. Should buy the sunglasses. Nice makeup. Obviously this is an assist item. The game definitely has a nice sense of humour, that I will say. Pink Rose, Spearmint, restores HP. No, I'm not spending all my gold on...
Careful out there, Swordmaster.
So if you ever played Secret of Mana, there was a cat character called Nico you used to meet to sell items. She's basically the equivalent of Nico. She is the shop throughout most of the game. So for an RPG, this one's actually quite sparse, I have to admit. Yeah, I didn't think we'd get as many people as we did last night. Unfortunately, last night was, how to say, a disappointing start to the stream, so... But I will use this to practice a bit, just to have a look around, so that way if I do a non-commentated video, I can get much further without flapping around. So yes, as you saw, I had finished it, but I finished it 18 years ago, so my recollection of the game is pretty minimal, apart from the fact that I missed the last dungeon was absolutely horrible. I missed at least one of the Subquest bosses that to this day still annoys me, so maybe it's time I correct that error at some point, do a full long play and actually it'd be nice to actually do a long play of all three games. Although, touch wood, my battery backups are still working on the first Albert Odyssey and Albert Odyssey 2. A lot of Super Nintendo games, the battery backups are beginning to fade on, sadly, which was inevitable, and they do need replacing. But yes, bearing in mind this has the battle rate reduced for the North American release, the Japanese version must be deeply unpleasant. Yep, so we're obviously not going this way, we've just got a little... We've got a cave. Mountain Pass. I've actually played through quite a few RPGs in Japanese. I enjoy the battle, but admittedly I have played a few games in Japanese where you do run into my knowledge of Japanese is incredibly limited. Okay, I need to get out of here pretty swiftly if that's doing 15 damage to me. So you've got defend, you've got use item, you've got run away, magic, I should actually say attack. Haven't actually explained. So when it comes to RPGs, I'm a bit of an RPG junkie, so as long as I get to play them, I'm fairly happy. And it's nice to have the English versions, but it's always good to play. You can play them in Japanese, but occasionally I have come across a few games where you need quite an in-depth understanding of Japanese to progress due to having to give items and things. I mean, I was just playing Terror of Stralus on the PSP the other day, or as I worked it out, it's actually the Tactics or the War of the Strolls, which was quite an interesting. It's not an RPG; it's actually quite a nice action hack and slash. But there were some bits where I had to consult a Japanese Wikipedia and Google Translate it because there's a part where you had to hand in a report, and you had to hand in specific parts of this report, otherwise the game wouldn't progress. And I was trying to figure out which parts it was, and saw this guide and I thought, okay, you've got to do these bits, and then it worked. But you are at the mercy. I mean, I have muddled through a few games steadily working out pieces, but it takes much more time. You basically have to be very thorough and basically jot down what you've done, what you haven't done, what you think might be the answer, and what you need to do. So but the soundtrack in this is fantastic. So that's the Mountain Pass. But yes, be aware if you're playing this on a power modified Saturn, the issue we had last night was that the intro will loop. And we ended up having to make basically, I think, about 4 or 5 attempts before it would actually run. Basically, when the intro cleared, you'd then get a blank screen and the audio would start over again, which wasn't what we wanted. Turns out it seems to be a random issue. I suspect it probably runs fine if I'd run it at 50 Hz. My suspicion is because it's not running at true 60 Hz, the loading is picking up the wrong point on the disc. So it should be loading up a different sector. I think that's what my suspicion would be. Sometimes the loads can be synced to frame rates, and if they are, that's when you're going to have slight problems if the frame rate's slightly behind where it should be. But I tried it 5 times and it did ironically work straight after. So that Mountain Pass was actually where I needed to go, so I'm going to have to go back there. Probably spent longer on the field than I should have done, but because I'm exploring, getting used to the area. But yeah, this is the thing. It's a lot of the videos we tend to do on this channel. Often I will actually play a section of the game and then replay it for the video, so that way I know what I'm doing. At least doing a dry run. I'm not necessarily going to spend months practicing it so I can get it down flawlessly. Although, based on the number of channels that do flawless runs, you might think that it's quite easy to do, but a lot of them are using save states, which quite angers me, because a lot of them are just cheating, basically. Okay, can't go that way. And rewind features as well as the new one. A lot of games have, so emulators have, so you can literally make a mistake, just rewind it. Now I have to be really careful. These snakes did 15 damage to me, so if I get hit by both of them, I'm going to be in serious trouble. Although you see early on the game's relatively easy, it does throw relatively easy enemies at you, certainly, that just literally dying as single hits. And as you saw last night, you do eventually end up with 5 characters in your party. There are 6 player characters in the game. 1 character is only in-ish the first part. They do actually appear in the second part, and there's a nice scene at the end of the game you can do with them where you're chatting and celebrating, but basically that character gets... Also, that character is in a higher position, so not able to join your story in the second bit, but you'll get replaced by Kai, who we showed in the previous video. Won't go spoiler mad on Yeah, I quite enjoy them as well. They are actually very nicely done sprites. They're more 32-bit than 16-bit era sprites as well. They're much bigger and chunkier than I think the SNES would do. I mean, they've definitely rejigged the game because the SNES uses an odd resolution and the Saturn can't reproduce that resolution correctly, so they've definitely fully rejigged the game for Saturn. I think it's worth rerunning the stream to show the start. I probably will just mention to a video where I go through the start as well, but it's just nice to show the start because I think we've got people actually quite some rather nasty booby trap there that's obviously been detonated in the past. Okay, 3 against 1, I'm going to use my special ability. Will that work? So yeah, there's no animation for like them being asleep or paralysed, which probably they needed to add in. That was mentioned in the working design text I read to you a bit earlier. So it's not clear they're actually asleep. You want to like a little zzz above their heads or something. Okay, another new spell there. Because the other way, because this is the thing, some of these stages do often have branching routes in our Odyssey, which is, as you saw earlier, the last dungeon was just exponential. But poor Pike starts off on his own, as you can see in this one, so it's a bit of a lonely slog, the initial part of the game, although you do get 5 characters relatively quickly. The second adventure, you get 5 characters pretty much from the get-go. You're literally like, come on guys, come back to us, fight again. Okay, so that one was straight, just done a battle. I'm not someone who likes to run from battle, but... Okay, so dead in this side, but a magical thing to restore my HP. There's also nice moments in this. I remember quite enjoying this when I played through it, but it's one of those RPGs that once I played through it, I never replayed. Although, to be fair, I never replayed Dark Savior 2. And Dark Savior? I didn't get a Dark Savior 2. Dark Savior. And Dark Savior is really good on Sega Saturn. Mysteria Realm of Lore I never replayed either, and again that's a massive game. It's a shame quite a few of these could really do with a reissue on a modern format. And yes, if you think the battles are bad in this version, imagine what they're like in the Japanese, considering the fact they've been cut down for this version. Can I go through that? Yeah, so you get lots of branching paths, which is nice for an explorative sense, but not so good if you want to go quickly through the dungeon, especially with the random battles. Yeah, as you see Sega Saturn, it's definitely... I mean, and this is the reduced version, so as I said, it would drive a lot of people up the wall. I'm a hardcore RPG fan, I really like battles, so... But yeah, you have to be patient. It's not the worst game I've ever played. The worst game by far is Tales of Fantasia, which is literally towards the end of the game, it's literally 5 steps and you'll get a battle. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 battle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 battle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 battle. That was by far the worst game. That was appallingly bad. You knew you could literally count the steps, like battle, and that was ridiculously hard. Okay, so that's a dead end I've just walked into. No treasure chest either. The spiders are still packing the snakes are still packing a wallet. We should actually kill the snakes first. But the battle, I mean, all the music is really, really good. Yeah. And you need good music to play an RPG to, because if the music's not good, you're going to need to rock your head to that battle music, because if you don't rock that head to your battle music, then your game is in trouble as an RPG, because battles are basically what a lot of people will be there to do. But yes, you do need the patience of a saint. I will say the death animation is a touch slow as well. It would be nice so you get the hit. So they should be dying then when you should really see the damage appear when just after the hit. So they probably should have slightly sped up the flow of the battle. So basically the damage should appear as you strike them and then they die while you're retreating back. Just to speed up the flow. Yes, I'm already level 6, 49 to the next XP as well, so... And yes, this is a reduced battle, so I can only imagine the Japanese version is even worse. You always want to like hold R to attack. It's like an auto battle. It's a shame the other two Albert Odysseys weren't translated. If I'm being brutally honest, I think they are. The other two Albert Odysseys are probably better games than this one. I think this is the weakest of the three, but this is the only one of the three to get an English translation. And this is quite a step away from the previous two in terms of how it plays, as you have a totally different combat system. At least it's an RPG that, how to say, gets into combat relatively quickly. You don't have to spend hours and hours. I mean, quite a lot. One of the reasons we don't tend to stream sort of the start of RPGs is many of them take about an hour or an hour and a half before you even get into game. Often with huge amounts of story, backpedaling, cutscenes that can sometimes be very, very grating. Yes, I can see the mention that they took out a sort of skip mode would have been quite handy. Playing without the reduced animation just so it sped things up. Yeah, that would have been very handy. And basically, or just an auto battle or battle resolve. So we know the exit was up here. Yeah. Yeah, the story wasn't too bad actually. I remember it being sort of enjoyable. So let's put these guys to sleep to start with, and let's hope we succeed in putting them to sleep. Yeah, I think from what I remember I enjoyed the story. I don't think it's the best story, but it was solid enough. I think the working design translation, there are a few moments where it's a bit cringe-worthy. Such as the thing where it said, like, when I was chatting, it said Pike peed his bladder, and it's just like, ooh, that's not really what you want in an RPG. But aside from the odd moment where working design perhaps go a bit off the rails or add too much culture referencing or sort of stylized it. And the Japanese games tend to have rude jokes in that generally tend to get cut from the Western versions. Yeah, she's got an American style chatty. Bits of this actually, the art style remind me of Mana. Yeah, so you've got a weird sort of... She's speaking like she's a teenager. So yeah, I'm always very keen to explore every route in an RPG, even if that means literally the other routes take you nowhere, but it's just a old habit. I'm so used to having to do it because often you don't know. In a lot of RPGs you would have routes where you'd go down that route and then it would be blocked off or you wouldn't be able to go back to there. So I'm always very cautious to make sure I go everywhere before I exit an area. And sometimes it's not even clear where the boss rooms are, etc. So we made it through the cave. We've just got to head out to and we'll get to the village. I will probably wrap up the stream in the near future. I'll actually play for a bit longer before I wrap it up. I just hope to get some different enemies from the were-dogs we've been fighting. I realise this is probably one of the obscure RPGs out there in terms of the Sega Saturn stuff. Although it's quite a common one, so... But I think not that many, a huge amount of people will have played it, but it's certainly worth. So there was the rock blocking our path, so now we've got through the mountain pass. We can head to the town of Gaigura? Okay, here we go. We've got, I mean, again, some really, I do like the artwork for this. It's a very, quite actually going to... So we've got Gunkins and Blue Slime. Let's try to set them, make them to sleep. I assume refresh heals. Heal conditions, yeah, I thought it probably heals you. So I'm going to go for the Gunkins first, because they're probably the harder enemy. One of the things is because I'm on my own at the minute, the enemies do need to go down for one character. Otherwise, it would take, if a battle like this would take 6 turns if they only went down on it. If they each took 2 turns to defeat, and you'd be taking tons of damage. So I can't remember when we heal Lila. You do eventually heal her. She's alive and well and living happily with you guys back when you get to the second part. So we go to the next town. And we are looking for the healer. I think it's Larai. So yes, basically search the open pots. They are what contain items in the treasure and the shells. Ooh, can I get that? Gotta find a drinking establishment. So I can't search that bookshelf. What do you think the problem is, you ugly haired freak boy? Well, yes, that's another case of... I mean, I'd like to believe that's perhaps a true translation of what she said, but probably something a bit more mundane normally. Cheers, Sega Saturn. Thanks for joining the stream. We will be back tomorrow. We're going to be streaming Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo. If you want to see tomorrow's Fight Night stream, me and Dragoon will be back. Glad you enjoyed this one, though. I'm glad you came back. I was hoping a few of you guys might come back to re-see Odyssey after last night. Somewhat disastrous stream. Well, we showed the end of the game, which isn't ideal because you don't really get to see the start and the sort of character building. Give him the gold. Give him the finger. Gag received. But yes, have a good night, Sega Saturns. And thanks for joining the stream. Okay, I think that, guys, there's a couple of hidden sub-quests you can do in this game. I think this is one of the quests. This guy's looking for his lost wife. Yeah, I think it is. You can find his wife in the sort of fountain thing. I think there's some hidden cave somewhere. It has to be done quite early on. There are side stories in this, but they often only have to be done at set points in the story. And if you skip it, you then can't do them, which is really irritating. And they do give you some really good, like, unique items that you can only get. And if you miss them, you can't get them back. Quite nice. He's drinking tea. So I think the long sword's definitely better. Yeah, so the little arrow tells you. So long sword. Let's go for the better equipment. Cotton armor equipped. Singer's dress. Large shield. So those other items should tell you we had another character joining our party in the near future. Just equip to them. So yes, Cirrus, despite being a magical sword, is not particularly good in combat at this point in the game. Which kind of makes the point of a magical sword if it's not as good as the sort of standard mundane sword. Okay, bars, that's where we've got to head next. The hooker, oh god. So again, that's that guy's joke is of course another thing that would not be in there originally because you wouldn't have references to I'm actually aware of at least one working design game where the translation would not be releasable now because it includes some very dubious comments, I should say. Nothing but dust. Oh, is it a kitty cat? Can we chat? Oh, we can chat to the cat. You save in case anything dire happens to me. Save a new one. So again, really lovely transparent clouds coming over. As I said, lots of transparency and nice effects in this game. A wrinkle. Well, the jokes may be true. A karaoke and a reference to probably the Whitney Houston version of "I Will Always Love You." Obviously the green girl's going to lose it. Stick around and watch. Difficult choice. I won't run. So it's like comedy edge here as well in this one as well. Something you don't normally see in RPGs. So I expect some of the working time translation may be closer to what's actually going on than you think. And here we go with a very perfectly timed boss battle for getting towards the end of the stream. So, and yes, we've Elk Ecat as well joining our party for the first time. So he's got heal, so basically I'm just going to attack. Wind out. Okay, and I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, yes, I will leave that cutscene there. I might actually rerun this again, as I mentioned, not on a stream, just doing an uncommentrated version, actually progress a bit further. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this stream of Albert Odyssey. I probably will do a bit more on this because I think it's worth it. It's certainly a nice little game. Probably deserves a bit more coverage. I know there's a few long plays of it, but none of them are. They're always like 720p. None of them are good sort of for 4K stuff, and we could do a sort of 4K video, so I will get one done, and I will do it in the higher resolution as well on the open source scan converter. So thanks for watching. I've been your host, Random Gamer Riven. This has been Albert Odyssey, Legend of Eldean, Legend of Eldean, I think is actually as pronounced. And again, developed by Sunsoft, released by Sunsoft in Japan, released by Working Design in North America, and it was not released in Europe. If you like this video, please do hit that like button. I very much appreciate your support for these streams, guys, seeing as we're doing them primarily because of the current world events, which unfortunately seem to be still ongoing and unfortunately are still rising at the minute, sadly. But thanks for watching, everyone. I will wish you a good night, a good evening, a good morning, or a good afternoon, wherever you are in the world today. And that's it from me. I will be back tomorrow. We will be doing a fight night tomorrow. We will be fighting it out on Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo, if you want to see. So join us then. Me and Dragoon will be battling it out. I will be mainly picking an array of characters, but Chief Thunder my specialty, and we will be practicing some Killer Instinct. So thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you all tomorrow in the